all your school rugby, all in one place. This is Next Gen 15.
Hello and welcome to the Next Gen 15 podcast. I'm Angus Savage. This week we have a very special guest because Dan Richards is sadly away. We have Will Roberts from Young Rugby, who you're going to be hearing loads of over the course of the next few days because he's part of our commentary team over at the St. Joseph's Festival. So, Will, good to have you on and hearing your voice a little earlier than all expected this week.
Well, yeah, I think unlucky for some, but no, it's great to be here chatting all things rugby.
No, it's going to be great to have you along. And Will, how can people get in touch with you?
Over at Young Rugby on pretty much every social media now. So Twitter, Instagram, even things like TikTok as well for more younger viewers. You can head over there and get in touch via those channels. I'm
told we have a TikTok account as well. I know nothing about it. If you want to get in touch with us, by the way, it's at NextGen15. That's at NextGenXV on Instagram, Twitter, etc., all the rest. And you can listen to us on Acast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You can watch us on YouTube if you're brave. And apparently there's something going on Amazon as well. So I'll keep you informed on that. Stay tuned. We're just going to start with a little bit of news because the RFU made a statement regarding Worcester Warriors, and in terms of pathways and academy players, it's quite a tricky old time on that front. So I just thought we'd share the statement they made, which is we are fully committed to ensuring local academy opportunities are provided for pathway players. Which doesn't really say anything, but I guess it says that they've not forgotten that they need to do something about the fact that there's a whole load of academy players who need some information.
I mean, it's a scary time because you look at, obviously the Worcester Warriors situation is a very disappointing one, but I don't think many people realise just how many sort of people the whole situation affects, not just the 23 that play in Premiership Rugby, but all of these players from sort of under 14 DPP all the way up to under 18 are going to get affected. So hopefully we can see some sort of centralisation in a similar sense to sort of with Leeds Carnegie and in Yorkshire becoming Yorkshire Rugby Academy. Obviously that sort of stunts a clear pathway for players to go, but look at Dan Lancaster, who came through recently from Yorkshire Rugby Academy, obviously now picked up initially by Leicester, now out at Ealing. So there is still hope for these young players, and I'm sure they'll find a home. But it'd be really good to sort of just make sure that these players are protected, and it's got to happen quick.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, it needs to happen, in my opinion, by Christmas. Once the Under-18 Academy League kicks off again, I think those pathway players need to be playing games. You know, we've seen what's happened with England Under-20s not playing enough games as individuals, that a very high-quality team in terms of player ability ends up not quite getting the results that might be expected of them because they simply don't have the game time under the belt. So you'd hope that these guys can get the game time. But I'm going to kind of rattle through the news because this is a St. Joseph's Festival special, but we'll also be diving in a bit on the Murchison Castle Festival. A little bit of news from the RFU actually on the Community Rugby Injury Surveillance Project. We're not going to get into it too much, but basically get in touch with the RFU if you want to be a part of this. It's basically a load of research to help understand injuries in sort of schools, community rugby level. Bath Uni are kind of running it all. It's massively important. I mean, Will, I'm sure you've seen like every single game this year has got a huge injury break. It's not necessarily because there's more injuries, it's because people are taking more care. But the more research we can do, just the better.
Absolutely. Echoing all of that, I mean, it's such as the game under 18 levels getting faster, stronger, harder, these players need to be looked after in the same sort of fashion. So it's good to see the RFU taking that initiative.
You may have seen this week in the news, or the last few weeks, there's been a lot of news about chess, cheating in chess specifically. Now, don't worry, I'm not about to go into a chess tangent, but it's reminded us that we are, over the course of the next week or so, we're going to be releasing our Next Gen 15 sort of ranking system for School First 15 Rugby. Just a way of sort of gauging where we think each team stands. But the reason I speak of chess is because it's chess that has inspired this. The chess ELO rating system is what we're going to use. which is very complex. I don't understand it. It's chess. It's very mathematical, but I've had a look at the what things look like at the moment in terms of the system, and it does seem to be pretty accurate. So I'm quite happy with that. It involved us having to rate every single school in the country where we thought they might be during pre-season, and then spent the first half of the season working out whether or not we were wrong or right. Differing opinions in some cases as to whether we were right or wrong, but we should have something for us next week. But two teams that are going to be flying up near the top of that are Wellington College and Millfield, who put on the most extraordinary game in the schools championship. Did you get a chance to see it? It was just mad. Absolutely mad.
I did. I watched it back on replay, and yeah, just the quality of rugby and handling, especially. I look at a few of those Wellington tries, and it'd be hard to find that at Premiership standard. The free flowing rugby that these schools seem confident enough to be able to create just creates such a good spectacle to be watching.
Yeah, massively, and I think we'll get into this when we get onto the St Joseph's Festival, I suppose. But the thing that becomes immediately apparent with games like these as they get towards the end is this is not like watching, I don't know, Premiership football or Premiership rugby, where yes, a good result is a good result and you're very happy about it, because these fixtures are all, they're part of a very small window of time in which you're playing alongside these people. They mean masses. I mean, the celebrations at the end for Millfield, huge. Like, the passion's just unbelievable for what is in effect just a mid-season game. But because of the nature of it, because everyone knows how big that game is, because of how good those two teams potentially are, it just creates this incredible atmosphere. And well, if we get finishes like that, special times.
Yeah, exactly. I think that ending is fairly similar to that of the way that Millfield managed to win the St Joe's trophy last year. Just being able to close out a game and making sure they're getting over the ball, working hard to, again, it's just to have that sort of composure at the age of 18. We're having to see it more and more as sort of younger players are thrown into more high pressure scenarios, whether it be all the way up at international level with teenagers starting for their country, or sort of a Premiership level, all the way down to now under 18s, where these sort of trophies and games, as you said, mid-season game means just so much. These boys really need to be screwed on for the whole season now.
Yeah, it's going to be incredible. It's going to be incredible to watch both those sides at the St Joseph's Festival. But before we get into that, there's another game that is just jumping off the page to me this week. Blackrock College against Sedbergh, Ireland against England. That famed sort of Leinster Academy, in effect, taking on the might of English schools rugby. That is special beyond belief.
It's an absolute humdinger. I mean, Blackrock have always been infamous for just sort of creating this conveyor belt of Irish talent, and Sedbergh, I mean, in this sort of recent spike in popularity of schoolboy rugby, they've really led the charge. You look at your Tuipulotu, Redpath, Curtis. These boys have come through that Sedbergh rank and really shone at schoolboy rugby level. And now they've got obviously a different set coming through, and yeah, it looks to be a really enticing game. I can't see which way it's going to go, because obviously these two teams, there's no comparables. They don't regularly sort of play each other. They don't have mutual sort of competitors either. So it is a completely blank slate, and we don't know what to really expect from this game. So it just makes it all that more exciting.
Yeah, that's the thing. We just don't know. I mean, for all we know, one of them could go and stick 50 on the other, or it could be 20 all draw. Can't separate the two of them. It could be 0-0. It's such an unknown. There are no predictions that can be made really, other than the fact that we are going to see one of the very best in England, if not the best, up against one of the very best in Ireland, if not the best. And that, I think it was 3 years ago, they met and Sedbergh won 24-22. So we hope that we get something similar, but it's going to be absolutely brilliant. The only downside is that you and I won't get to watch it live, because there's something bigger going on this weekend in terms of number of teams, in terms of history, and in terms of prestige. and that is the St Joseph's Festival. You're going to be one of our lead commentators there. What are you feeling about it? Looking forward to it?
So excited. So excited. It is, for me, the highlight of the schoolboy rugby year, because it's smack bang in the middle of the season. So it's a real, usually a turning point for a lot of teams. You look at a side like Trinity, who are coming in unbeaten, compared to a side like Millfield, who have had obviously this win against Wellington, which gives them a good sort of catalyst going into the competition. But in comparison to recent years, haven't had the best of form during this sort of first half of the main rugby term. So it can be a real turning point for these schools. And I think there are so many dark horses within this competition now that there are sort of a good 8 or 9 teams that you can look at and go, oh, I can give you a run. And we've got to mention it's not just about the cup as well. We've got the plate, the bowl, and the shield to play for. So there is all levels of sort of competition. There is always going to be tense and tight moments. So it's just such a good competition to go to.
I think that's the thing here. Well, 2 points there that I think are key. One is, I had exactly the same thought as you. I was looking through the teams that are attending and going, yeah, they could win it. Oh, they could win it too. Oh, and them. And I got to about 8 or 9 teams and went, wow, this is open, to the extent that I think in our preview yesterday I wrote that this was potentially the most incredible lineup we've ever seen at the St Joseph's Festival, the most competitive, the deepest, the most potential champions. And it's not because of a lack of quality at the top levelling the field. It's about an abundance of quality at the top. It's from that side of things, I just cannot wait. But I think you're right as well. You know, you've got those three other trophies up for grabs. And if anyone thinks that they're those trophies aren't going to be competed for with just the same fervour as the top end, they've got another thing coming. Yeah, last year the hosts St Joseph's College winning the Shield. You'd think they'd be really disappointed with that. Not a bit of it. As soon as they knew that was up for grabs, they were all in for it. And it led to some of the greatest drama I think we've ever seen at the St Joseph's Festival, partly because of the new format, because we introduced penalty shootouts. And I want to get into penalty shootouts because I tell you what, they're controversial, but I loved it last year. Absolutely loved it. So cool.
It is. It was just such a tense moment that... And some of them, I think it was that St Joe's one, went on for ages.
Yeah.
I mean, tight head props were sort of getting a bit nervous, thinking that maybe they'd get sort of called up. The amount of kicks that they're having to go to. I think we went all the way out to 5 as well.
Yeah, we were. I think we were doing that. We were all over the place.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
It was amazing to watch, and the. Yeah, I mean, to go through the controversy on them, people don't like penalties because it puts undue pressure on school players. I kind of get that, fine. But here's the thing with penalties and why they exist. We have to say, if it's a knockout competition, someone has to progress. These games are limited to only 20 minutes. Therefore, there is an undue premium on scoring a try. So if 2 teams score and you end up level, it is grossly unfair to say to one team, either you scored first or you scored last, therefore you're progressing, even though you've not outperformed anyone. You just, by virtue of when you happen to score, we've decided you're progressing. So you need something else. Your options are then a coin toss or a penalty shootout. I think we'll have a penalty shootout. And you know what? These are some of the best of the best in schools rugby. They can handle a bit of pressure. You know, they've got good coaches around them, good people around them. If it goes wrong, there'll be an arm around the shoulder. There won't be fingers pointed. There won't be blame adjusted. You'll hear it in our commentary. There's no blame attached to someone missing one of these things. My God, could you imagine? No, not a bit of it. It's all about the drama, the tension, the excitement, and the opportunity. And that's why they're so good, because it just added... I mean, this is one of the most dramatic weekends anyway. And then you're adding in a layer that just makes it all the more dramatic. I mean, imagine if the final goes down to penalties in the trophy.
It would be unbelievable. I think another point to mention is that these boys, they're the first to put their hands up for it.
Yeah.
No boy is sort of stepping up to that tee, sort of unsure on whether they want to sort of go ahead with it. Otherwise, their coaches wouldn't be putting them there. it is very much player led. You see when that penalty shootout is called by the referee, the sort of glint in a few players' eyes who have been out there on that wet, cold Tuesday night, still kicking at goal after everyone's gone home, and that's their moment to shine. That's their particular specialty. So players jump at this opportunity. I think it's harsh to say that it's a difficult way to go or a difficult way to progress, because these boys are up for it, and they want to do it and want to be that name and lights for their school.
100%, and it's a props dream, is it not? Every prop in the world spends the first 20 minutes of every training session kicking a goal. Now they actually get to use that skill that they've been honing for so long. This is the chance. Can't wait. But having a look at the groups, the groups are all. We've talked about how good all the teams are. The groups are all unbelievable. But what are your predictions? We get 2 teams going through to the trophy quarterfinals from each group. What are you thinking? Group 1, we've got Denstone, Dulwich, Hurst, and Wellington College. What do you reckon?
I think this one. I can't see past Denstone and Wellington. I think that Dulwich have had a difficult start to the year. They've obviously not got the likes of someone like Zach Carr, who for them last year was just so monumental.
Yeah, built the team around him, didn't they? It was brilliant.
Exactly. So I think they potentially lost a real talisman in him. And Denstone being Denstone, I think this 20-minute shortened format sort of really works well into their favour. They've got a great physical fitness and stamina to go through a whole tournament, and their size and power to sort of just muscle over and get that physicality could really work in their favour. They got top 4, was it last year?
Yeah, came fourth. In fact, met Wellington in the 3rd/4th playoff. So that'll be an interesting grudge match. I think it's an interesting point you make actually about Denstone's physicality as well, because I often think St Joe's doesn't really reward physicality that well. You know, we saw Kirkham Grammar last year. In a way, they kind of punched themselves out because they were so physical, and on day one they looked like the dominant force, but they were hanging on for bodies and stuff by the end. This is a good group for a physical side like Denstone. It's quite a backs orientated, move the ball kind of a group. So the physicality element is quite low in relative terms. I mean, everyone can play a pretty physical standard, but everything's relative. So if they can get through this first day without having too much of a physical challenge, even if they drop a game against Wellington or something, qualify second, say, but then on day 2 they're fresher than other physical teams because they've had a more physical group, they could find themselves at a real advantage. I'd be intriguing to see. I think they're a proper dark horse. And then, I'm with you. I mean, Wellington College, the other ones that I would expect to go through, they also have the great advantage of just massive depth, which is a huge help. Group 2, this one's awesome. 2 new teams, Marlborough College and Trinity. Trinity, as you say, unbeaten, come in as Schools Cup champions. One of the few teams I think that's ever walked into this on their debut and goes in straight as a favourite. And then alongside them, Whitchurch High School and Kirkham Grammar School, who obviously won the plate last year and reached the final in their debut in 2019. That's a pretty spicy group.
Absolutely. I think that Marlborough and Whitchurch, I think potentially might have a slightly tougher time of it, because Kirkham and Trinity, for me, I mean, they're 2 sides of the coin in their playing style. I mean, you couldn't get more 2 sort of or different teams. It's like because Trinity, who build their side around someone like Josh Bellamy, who I think is going to have a stormer.
He's so well suited to the St Joe's format as well. I just think he's a perfect player for it.
Look at the way that he's tore up Seaford Tens last year, just before the 7th season, single-handedly winning it for Trinity with a score in the final and then a drop kick conversion. I mean, the boy is special. He's got some real Marcus Smith qualities about him. So I think that Trinity and Kirkham will probably be heading through with this. But I'm really looking forward to Kirkham Whitchurch. I think for physicality, I think that could be a really tough game. And as you mentioned, in a similar sort of sense with the Denstone, Kirkham could have a real tough time of it against Whitchurch and really tire themselves out and potentially have a repeat of last year. But Any difference on that? Marlborough potentially.
I think Marlborough and Whitchurch are two sort of unknown quantities in a funny sort of way. So Whitchurch an unknown quantity because just playing a completely different circuit to everyone, and much like the year where they turned up with Christians and it was like, oh, okay, this guy's a freak, and no one was prepped for it. Just the nature of being on a different circuit, they could just shock people. And at Marlborough, they play a good brand of rugby. They're very, they tend to score a lot of points. They tend to play quite wide, quite fast, not dissimilar to Trinity in a way. So there is the opportunity for them if they get, we know that early points are a massive boost in this tournament because there's not enough time to claw back that. They are the sort of side that could hit you for 2 quick tries early, and then they might be on the back foot. But all they've got to do then is hold out. So they could be an interesting one. But I think, you can't look past Kirkham and Trinity, can you? I mean, they're two of the best teams in the country. I mean, I would rate both of them probably in the top 5 at the moment. They're just incredible. Group 3, reigning champions Millfield, new boys Strathallan from Scotland, and then 2 former champions from the 90s, Queggs Wakefield and RGS Newcastle. No, sorry, not from the 90s with RGS Newcastle, 2018. That's quite a difference. Millfield, Queggs Wakefield, RGS Newcastle, Strathallan. What are your thoughts on this one?
This is my favourite group. I think that other than Millfield, who I think will go through, between Newcastle, Strathallan and Wakefield, it is a complete dogfight. I think that any team there could turn up against any team. Queggs Wakefield are usually seen as like the punching bag in a few of these competitions. Had a tough time last year at St Joe's, and I think they were up at Sedbergh at the end of last season. Gave it a good showing and had a few sort of standout names who, if I recall correctly, the majority of their strong players were younger boys who were lower sick then.
Yeah.
So potentially could be reaching their peak now. So I think that Strathallan are coming in, as we said, in similar vein to Marlborough and Whitchurch, unknown quantity. We don't know how they'll turn up. Obviously got one of the longest journeys as well. That play a factor. The fact that they're playing so far from home, lots of tired and sore bodies sort of making the way all the way down from Scotland. But I don't know. I think Millfield, and then it's a toss-up for me between Newcastle and Wakefield. I'd love to see Wakefield go through.
Be cool, wouldn't it?
I think, I don't know. I'm going to leave this one to you, Angus. I think it's a tough group.
Well, I'm with you on Millfield. I mean, they're one of the favourites heading into it, particularly after what happened at the weekend. It's an interesting group because all of them have to travel a fair way, which might ease Strathallan's concerns on that. I think, though, I'd lean RGS Newcastle to go through for 2 reasons. One, they've got that recent history. There's probably a few boys in there that have, grown through the school on stories of what happened in 2018. And also, they've played some tough teams this year. They played Sedbergh. All right, they were well beaten, but who's not beaten by Sedbergh? But that experience of having played against a sort of top of the pile kind of a school may just help them. It's sort of battle hardening in a way. So I think they might just be the ones to sneak through alongside Millfield. But it's going to be a really interesting group. Not as interesting, I think, as Group 4 though. Brighton College, Hampton, RGS High Wycombe and St Joseph's College, where I think there are 2 sides that stand out as the ones that will go through. However, I also think both of them could easily come unstuck, particularly against the hosts, because you just don't know what St Joseph's College might do, and RGS High Wycombe do not roll over for anybody. So I think you could be in a spectacular group there.
This group is really mouth-watering. Brighton, who I think were hard done by last year, obviously got into the final, had an incredible team, sort of put together by Johnny Smith, who was the real heart.
God, he was amazing last year, wasn't he?
Yeah, he really was. Charlie Clare as well had an excellent tournament at 9. So I think, they all look strong. Hampton, again, who always seem to fall short in these sort of competitions, but go in as sort of fairly firm favourites. In recent years, they've struggled at the likes of Rosslyn Park and Sedbergh and St Joe's, sort of heading towards the second tier of competition in the majority of those big tournaments. St Joseph's College, when you've got a coaching setup of Ronan Winter as your DOR, you've got James Ingle as well as your assistant director of sport. I mean, they're looking almost like a semi-professional outfit at the moment, with the coaching group that they've brought in. I've heard that they've also added a few extra players from the Netherlands, who I'd love to hear more about, as well as a few other talents, and have had a strong start to the season, a few 50-pointers. So I think if there's any chance that Joeys are going to be able to make a mark on their own turf, that it very well might be now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think probably their biggest challenge is that the three sides that are alongside them have real festival experience, and so know what to expect. They know the storm that's coming when you run out against St Joseph's College. I think if they had one or two of the new teams in their group, they could shock them, absolutely shock them, because I just think that the atmosphere created, the passion generated is like nothing else you see in schools rugby when St Joseph's run out of the festival. And I think a lot of new teams won't be prepped for that. I think, Brighton College under Nick Boy, Hampton under Andy Beattie, and RGSI Wickham under Ben Honeybent, they know what they're doing. They've been there and done that. So I think that element may be reduced slightly, and you might end up with matches that are more of an on the field contest rather than a headspace contest. But any individual at any moment can get caught up in that atmosphere. For me, Hampton go through, definitely. Mm-hmm. I think they arrive unbeaten. They've played some unbelievably good schools this year, and come up on the right side, and without too much difficulty in doing that as well. Got a decent chance of adding to that 2015 title. Brighton College as well. It's been a funny old season. They've been beset with injuries, and they've not necessarily had all the results that they might want, but they seem to have most of their boys back now. And I cannot remember the last St Joseph's Festival where Brighton College didn't turn up. They just, when the music stops, Brighton College are there, kind of thing. It just always seems to work out that way. So I think those two go through, but RGS and St Joe's are not going to make it easy for anyone. They are really going to make it tough, and they will be frustrated and angry if they don't get through to the trophy quarterfinals, which means watch out every single other team in the bowl.
Exactly.
But I think it'll be great. We've had some incredible festivals over the years. Last year I thought was just incredible. It felt particularly special because it was that we'd been missing a year, and then we came back, and there was just something unique about the atmosphere. It was semi-grateful just to be there, semi a celebration of just all things school rugby, and then of course you've just got just the St Joe's factor to just lob in on top. It felt incredible, and when the sort of phrase I've already used, but when the music stops, Millfield win kind of thing. A record-breaking title, their 7th, taking them one clear of Colston's. And incredibly, I was doing a bit of research the other day. So Colston's have won 6 St Joseph's Festivals titles. Yeah. Millfield have won 7. The next closest is 3, which is St Joseph's College, the hosts, who've always been there, and Filton College won 3 back when the Ace colleges were a part of things. No one else, aside from those 4, has won more than 1. It's when you put it into that context, Millfield winning 7 is extraordinary.
Yeah. It's the repeat of success after success after success, and in a schoolboy context, it's very rare that you get that, considering that you have massive turnover each year. You get a completely new squad, and dissimilar to club rugby, where you can have a Saracens-esque dominance because you're keeping the same core of players for 5-6 years. You're turning over in schoolboy rugby, which sounds obvious, but it's a massive factor as to why we get so much turmoil in the sort of top ranks of schoolboy rugby. But the fact that Millfield, we sort of say every year, we're like, oh, surely, I mean, we've got to put them up there, but surely this year isn't as good as last year. Last year they were amazing. This year, well, no, can't be as good. But then they go and do it again, and they keep on creating names out of these players, and I'm sure we'll see it again this time around.
Yeah, and I think that stat in many ways should encourage basically all 15 other teams, because in essence, if Millfield don't win, you have a huge chance of winning, because it's always a different team that wins. Yeah. So you just look at it and go, well, anyone can win now. So I think it blows things wide open. But I'm sort of reflecting on that Millfield team last year. I look back to 2014, one of my first St Joseph's festivals, and they won the title with this. It was an incredible team, but the performance from Tom Whiteley was just outrageous. He was like, at that point, I think he was like low 6 or something, and he weighed about 4 stone. He looked like it was going to be a painful
Was he
weekend.
Playing at fly half?
He was playing fullback at that point. They were trying to keep him out. They were trying to keep him out of the firing line. He was so small, but he just, as soon as he touched the ball, it was like, oh wow, this guy's special. And we've seen that year after year. I mean, the year before, Lewis Ludlam leading St Joseph's College to the title was just a beast, and he was more than that. He was a presence, and it's unusual to see that at schoolboy level, where someone exudes leadership in that kind of Andy Farrell fashion, where they sort of appear on the scene and you go, oh, okay, I'm listening to whatever this person says. A funny fact about that: Will Stace, one of our other commentators for the weekend, sent me a photo of him as a ball boy holding Lewis Ludlam's hand as Ludlam ran out for the St Joseph's Festival final in 2013. Oh, wow. And now will be on the mic in 2022.
Amazing.
But there have been some great ones. I mean, you mentioned Marcus Smith earlier. He had just the most incredible couple of performances at the festival, and that at a time when Brighton College and Cranley were having a real ding-dong battle. I think Cranley won the title after a draw in the final, which was something I can't remember exactly how it went down. I think it was that Cranley had scored first and therefore won the title. So Brighton College obviously, kept a hold of that memory and came flying back the following year to win the title. And then we had RGS Newcastle and Jim Pollock's last year in charge, where Phil Brantingham was incredible. We've seen the likes of Zach Mercer have incredible tournaments, Chris Schunzer, Finn Baxter, Hugh Tizard, and then last year, as you mentioned, Johnny Smith was just incredible. Who are the lads you're looking to this year? I mean, we've already mentioned Josh Bellamy. Who are you looking to this year and thinking, I can't wait to see them?
It's a very good question. I think Ewan Davis for Millfield. Yeah. I think he'll be the real pivotal part. If he's playing well, I think Millfield will play well. Yeah. Because they seem to be working around him, and a lot more sort of forward dominant potentially, I think, Millfield this season in comparison to look at last year and their back line. You had your Sam Harris, Kamanga Durback, Joe Denmark. These players out wide, you were desperate to give it to them. And Harris would pull the strings and kick passes and floating balls over the top like nobody's business. But I think it's going to come down to the number 9, and Davis will be in there at the harder things. I think Hall for Wellington as well, after his performance. He's
playing really well
at the weekend. I think he's got all the form in his back pocket to be able to try and make a nuisance of himself from a Wellington perspective.
I think Wellington will be really interesting on that as well, because with Rory Taylor at 10,
Yeah, the combination.
They're a backline heavy side, and they probably won't want to. If they can get up in a game, I think we then may see Rory Taylor just going, I'm just going to put the ball in the right parts of the field, and you guys just try and play out, because they've got a backline that's capable of scoring early. I think it'd be really interesting to watch them go.
Yeah. What about you, Angus? What names stand out?
There's a few that are knocking around. I'm quite excited to see Ethan Dando down at Brighton College.
Yeah.
Early injuries this year, was a star in lower sixth last year. I think this could be a year where he really starts to step up. As we've mentioned, Josh Bellamy. I think also for Wellington College, I'm interested to see Tyler Afire. Every time I've watched him, he's scored. Some of them simple, some of them hard. But I think, and again, it's that sort of Taylor combination out to him. I think that'll be really interesting. I'm excited as well to see some of the players that I've not really had a chance to see yet. Guys from Strathallan, guys from RGS Newcastle, guys from Whitchurch High, places like that where we've, just by virtue of geography, I've not had much of a chance to see them. So it'd be really interesting to see how they all go. And I've actually not watched Hampton in person yet this season, and I cannot wait to see them, because they're incredible by all accounts. But we're going to park the St Joseph's Festival for now. Trust me, there's plenty more content about it coming up over the course of the next few days, and indeed the weekend. And we're just going to have a very quick look at the Murchison Castle Festival. We're not going to go in quite as much depth, but I just want to have a look across the groups and maybe just pick out a couple of teams that we think might go far. It's an absolute machine, this festival. Gone from 8 teams in 2019 up to 16 now in 2022, and running the same format as the St Joseph's Festival, describing themselves as kind of the friendly festival, which I quite like. But we've got Murchison Castle, Norwich, Peebles Rugby Club, Wycliffe College, Ayr Rugby Club, Barnard Castle, Bedford, Mount St Mary's College, Camford, Ipswich, St Benedict's, Uppingham, Boroughmuir Rugby Club, Collegiate, which of course used to be Colston's, George Watson's College, and Seaford College. I mean, there's some top schools there. Who stands out for you?
I think the fact that Barney and Bedford are meeting each other in the group, I think is very mouthwatering. Bedford School unbeaten this year so far, and they've come up against tough opposition, likes of Eton Rugby, just beat NSB 52-50. So they're coming in.
Insane game, by the way. Mad.
I was there, and it was a proper humdinger of a game. It just went back and forth. Try. Defences took a back seat for that game.
They had defence optional. Love it.
Exactly. But I think, Bedford really going with their tails up. Obviously lost out in the final last year to Seaford, who come again with one of the longest journeys all the way up to Edinburgh from down south, and they'll certainly be up for the challenge as well. And then obviously the Scottish teams, a complete unknown entity. Even the rugby clubs, you never know what's coming from them. I think there's a lot of exciting names being thrown around in that cup.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I mean, I think obviously as hosts, you just can't you cannot discount Murchison Castle. They're a very good team in most years anyway, and as hosts that gives them a boost. I think it's almost a shame, isn't it, that in Group 2 you've got Barnard Castle, Bedford, and the Schools Vase champions, I suppose Mount St Mary's, all grouped together, where I suppose the danger is they punch themselves out. But all three could go far. I think, Ipswich in Group 3, they're capable of brilliance. They're capable of brilliance on any given day, and they are very prepared to challenge themselves, as we've seen by the sort of circuit they've been playing on, making trips up to Sedbergh and all the rest of it. Sleeping on the floor in the sports hall, I believe, as well, when they did that. Brilliant. And then obviously Seaford College, the champions. So I think it's going to be really cool. I'd love to see more festivals. I think these are such a great format. You get 16 teams all in one place for the weekend, playing different schools that you wouldn't necessarily normally play, making mates that you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise met. I just think they sort of, to me, embody a little bit of what school rugby is all about.
the fact that it's all centralised, it's all happening in one place, and you as a spectator, us as fans of schoolboy rugby in general, are able to spend a day, afternoon, whatever it may be, just watching a showcase of schoolboy rugby. Because at the end of the day, winning, losing, great, so be it. For in a schoolboy rugby context, it's all about the performance. It's all about the players. Because at the end of the day, like, we are looking at the future of English rugby, Scottish rugby, Irish rugby, in some places that we see with Blackrock. So it's all about creating those new players. And if you can put all of those top stars in one place, then you can't really ask much more of it. So yeah, I'd love to see it. And the shortened format in a 10 scenario as well gives players a different dimension. Players that potentially have a rougher time of it in 15s and won't get a look in at 7s can find a mid ground in 10s and really excel in that format.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's so great to see, when it all happens. I think the atmosphere as well is something that I just find incredible. Getting all these people in one place, and it builds. Even at St. Joe's is a unique situation where the atmosphere is just mad. But when you look at the Sedbergh 10s, the Seaford 10s, Murchison Castle Festival, things like that, you do still get that sense of an atmosphere building as tension starts to build as well. I just think it's awesome. But we've got a couple of little bits we've got to get through that are our regular features, and you're going to be on the spot on this. We've got to pick out our top 5 school teams from the weekend and our greatest fly half of the decade. Schools rugby only. Well, schools and sort of what they've done as a schoolboy only. It's the fly half this week, and we're going to start with that. And ultimately, I think we all know where we're going to end up with this. But there are a lot of names that deserve a mention, and one that actually I didn't include on my notes, which was Jamie Benson from Hampton, who was just an amazing player. He was playing 12 last night for Harlequins in the Premiership Cup, but a natural fly half. But I think it shows you a little bit about his qualities, that he's a relatively small bloke, and Harlequins went, yeah, have a run at 12, not a problem. He was sensational for Harlequins. But have there been any lads for you in the last couple of years that have really stood out?
I think obviously leaning away from the obvious, I always loved having a look at Johan Lloyd as a schoolboy rugby sort of fly half. Yeah. I think that sort of small jack in the box 10, I always love to see. I think it's always nice and cool to have potentially more of your sort of directional and organisational fly halves, like your sort of Manivanapolas at Harrow, who can control a game very well, or potentially like a Finn Smith with his kicking ability and his skill set. But to have someone like Johan Lloyd, who could, in similar vein to I think how we're going to see Josh Bellamy at St. Joe's, who could just go, right, go on then, and then just come out of nowhere with this 7-point sort of moment of brilliance and win Clifton the game. That is what I love to see in a fly half at schoolboy level, and adding that extra element. So I'd always sort of give a shout out to him. I think we have to mention, I mentioned him briefly then, but Finn Smith, when he was at Warwick, obviously great news that he's now managed to be picked up by Northampton. I think this is going to be the making of him. I think he's going to absolutely catapult and head into stardom, and we may see. Choose
Scotland, Finn. Choose Scotland.
I know you'll be cheering for that, Angus, but I would love to see a Smith starting for England and a Smith to come off the bench.
No, Smith v Smith. That's what we want. That's what we want.
Yeah, I think it's his namesake, isn't it, that has to take the cake.
Yeah, I mean, Marcus Smith for Brighton College was. We see what he does now. I promise you, to everyone listening, what he was doing as a schoolboy was almost better. It was just incredible. He was playing England under-20s, fly half, leading the team basically as a schoolboy. I mentioned the St. Joseph's Festival earlier, where he was running the show, and he did one of the most outrageous things I think I've ever seen a schoolboy player do. he was. I was stood behind the post with his coach Nick Boy, just having a chat. And we were talking about Marcus and how good he was, and Brighton were under quite a lot of pressure. Can't remember who they were playing, but they were under quite a lot of pressure, and Marcus was basically in the dead ball area as well. Mm-hmm. And Nick is saying to him, Marcus, like, sensible, just get the ball deep, get the ball deep. You know, you could see the play unfolding. It was obvious it was going to come to him at some point. Get the ball deep, start again up the field. And Marcus, as the ball is coming to him, turns his head to Nick, winks at him, and pretty much goes the length. And Nick just turned to me and went, he's just too good. He's just too good. He was incredible. I mean, I'm so pleased that what he showed as a schoolboy is translating into adult rugby, because, you know, for a lot of players that doesn't happen, but no. As a schoolboy he was just magical to watch, absolutely magical, and I still can't quite believe that he was running a Premiership team from fly half as an 18-year-old. It's just crazy.
It is mad. I think an interesting point that I'd really like to note is that we've got a list here of sort of these candidates, and it's really interesting to see just how many of these players have started as a fly half for schoolboy rugby purposes, and have found themselves in all different sorts of places in their senior rugby. You look at like Max Malin's at fly half of Felsted, or as we mentioned, Johan Lloyd, Fraser Dingwall, who was used a lot at 10 for Bedford, 15 as well, but is now firmly rooted within the centres. Tom de Glanville, Omanga now seems to be firm rooted as a fullback. Ali Crossdale. It's such an interesting phenomenon that we get these players that schoolboy rugby are desperate to have at the heart of their teams. It just shows just how special that these boys end up being.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's the natural thing, isn't it? You want to move your sort of talented players to positions where they can have the most influence on the game, and that often means moving them to fly half. One that makes me laugh though is Adam Hastings, who spent his lower sixth year, despite now being an international fly half, as an inside centre, because there was another international fly half occupying the fly half slot, which was Callum Sheedy. Just incredible stuff at Millfield. But yeah, you're right. There are a lot of guys who they'll kind of probably come into our conversation more next week as 12s. You know, the likes of Harry Malander, Cameron Redpath. If Fraser Dingwall, we can pretty much put him anywhere in the back line, couldn't we? The man doesn't miss tackles. Never has.
No. I've never seen him miss one.
It's incredible. Sure. I remember watching him for Bedford in the Champions Trophy and thinking, how is this guy just making tackles all the time? Yeah. He's a fly half. He should be getting protected. But that's it. Yeah, Marcus Smith locked in at fly half. The likes of Finn Smith, Charlie Atkinson, Orlando Bailey, who, by the way, single-handedly won an under-15 Vars for Thomas Hardy before he moved to Beach and Cliff. Tom Curtis, Max Malins, Jamie Benson, so many guys. But Marcus Smith is our lock-in. I'm conscious that we're very short on time, so we're going to go to our top 5 school teams of the weekend. There's a couple of lock-ins for me, which is Langley Park, who came down from 31-5 at half-time against John Fisher to win 32-31. Nice. Amazing. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that gets you in. The other lock-in, Millfield, that was incredible. Yeah. Enough said, just incredible. Another side I'd like to see in there, actually, is Bedford Modern. Bit of a rival of yours over at Bedford, but they're having a really good season, performing better than they have done for a number of years. Went to Uppingham, who aren't having the best season, but Bedford Modern normally wouldn't expect to beat Uppingham, and they got a 21-5 victory. And for me, that gets them in, which leaves us with 2 slots. Anyone that stands out for you?
Warwick for me. To beat Stamford, 20 points to 10. Stamford were at the start of this season. They were that team that everyone was like, "Oh, is this going to be Stamford's year?" They're obviously having big performances.
Yeah, beat Stowe.
Yeah, exactly. But for Warwick to sort of go, right, hang on a sec, and put sort of that 10-point gap on them, I think is a really important sort of statement from them.
Yeah, I like that. And that leaves us with one position to be filled. It's tricky. So I've got a bit of a short list.
Mm-hmm.
Ipswich and Kirkham Grammar School, both with very big wins. I don't like putting teams in that have got big wins, but given their opposition, they probably deserve a bit of a shout out for that. Dame Allen's winning the Tom Burrows Cup against some really strong opposition on their circuit up in the northeast of England. But I think for me, I lean to two teams in the same town, the Judd and Tunbridge. Tunbridge, who had a really tough start to the season, losing to the Judd, but have pieced together a little bit of form and got a victory against one of their biggest rivals, Radley, at the weekend. And then the Judd, unbeaten. Probably their toughest game of the season so far in terms of on the field against RGS Guildford, who, let's remember RGS Guildford had beaten Epsom College for the first time in 11 years at the start of the season. The Judd get the job done. They're probably going to head into half-term unbeaten. So I'll give you a casting vote. Which side of Tunbridge Town do you want to go to?
I'd like to be invited back. So this is quite a difficult choice to make. I think just for their progression throughout the season, and if we're talking about from the weekend, I think that Tonbridge victory is really crucial for them. I think the Judd have been performing really, really well throughout the season, and could very well sort of end up on this list later on down the line. But for now, as a statement victory, halfway through the season, to go and beat Radley is a really nice performance. So I think Tunbridge just edged that.
Well, there we go then. That's our top 5 school teams of the weekend. Locked in: Bedford Modern, Langley Park, Millfield, Tunbridge and Warwick. And our greatest schools fly half of the decade, joining Alex Mitchell in the halfbacks, is Brighton College's Marcus Smith. Will, thank you so much for joining me. Late notice, I know. Please listen to Will on @Young Rugby on Instagram, Twitter, etc. He's doing some really great stuff. It's been awesome to have you, Will.
No, thank you very much, Angus. Always a pleasure.
You can catch up with us on @NextGen15 across all the social channels, and you can listen to us on Acast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and see us on YouTube. And do remember to catch every second of the St Joseph's Festival live on NextGen15 this weekend. Will be chatting away throughout the 2 days. We'll look forward to it. See you next time.